Welcome to today's Explainer. We are about to go on an absolutely incredible journey through time. We're going to trace the awe-inspiring 4.6 billion year story of exactly how we came to be. And this isn't just a story about human beings. It's the story of water, of soil, microscopic organisms, and just this incredibly long voyage that brought us to where we are sitting right now.
Who am I? It's a really profound question, right? We modern humans constantly ask ourselves this when we look in the mirror. But the truth is, the answer doesn't actually start with us. It starts billions of years ago in a world we literally wouldn't even recognize. To figure it out, we have to go back so far that time itself gets kind of blurry. Back to when Earth was just a young planet and life was, well, barely even a distant possibility.
Okay, picture this. 4.6 billion years ago, Earth is forming from these giant clouds of stardust and gas in our solar system. And it is just a fiery hellscape of magma, volcanoes, and constant meteorite strikes. There are no forests, no animals, definitely no humans, just fire, smoke, and restless rock. Meteorites are pounding the surface from above, volcanoes are spewing fire from below. If you looked at it then, you'd think life was absolutely impossible. But deep inside this toxic, molten fireball, the seeds of the future were actually hidden.
Fast forward a bit, and the planet slowly begins to cool down. Hard rocks form on the surface, and water vapor starts gathering in the atmosphere. And then, the relentless rain begins. But we're not talking about a quick afternoon shower here. This rain fell for maybe thousands or even millions of years. Just imagine that. This epic, non-stop downpour finally cooled the scorching earth, filled up these massive deep craters, and eventually formed our very first oceans.
Now, think about the oceans we know today. Calm, blue, totally life-sustaining. The early oceans were a stark contrast to that. They were hot, incredibly salty, and super chemical rich. Basically, they were these harsh, boiling chemical soups agitated by lightning, intense heat, and underwater volcanoes. But strangely enough, this chaotic environment became nature's very first laboratory. Down in the depths, elements were just constantly mixing and changing, perfectly setting the stage for nature's greatest experiment. While science doesn't have the complete answer to how it happened just yet, we do know that deep in those dark, warm waters, energy and chemicals collided. Molecules connected and got more complex, leading to the very first life. And it wasn't a fish or a plant, it was microscopic. These single-celled entities had no brain, no eyes, no heart, but they had this one incredible, world-changing ability. They could make copies of themselves. It is truly breathtaking to realize that from this one simple act of replication, the entire story of evolution just took off, driven by tiny little changes over generations.
Over millions of years, that simple life built up into something spectacular. It started with what we call the oxygen shift. First, some early microbes learned an amazing trick. They started using sunlight for energy. And by doing that, they released oxygen. Now, at first, oxygen was actually a deadly poison to a lot of organisms. But soon, cells adapted to use that oxygen as the ultimate energy source. With all that extra energy, in a massive leap forward, complex cells formed via symbiosis. Basically, one cell absorbed another, and instead of destroying it, they became partners. That crucial teamwork created the complex cells that would eventually turn into plants, animals, and us.
Then, life rapidly accelerates during what's known as the Cambrian Explosion. The oceans are suddenly teeming with diversity. Soft bodies start hardening up into armor, sharp eyes and protective shells develop, and crucially, jaws emerge. This is huge because it allows for active hunting instead of just drifting around. This is also when we see the very first vertebrates, creatures with a backbone, show up, completely transforming the ocean into this highly competitive, dynamic hunting ground.
But here's the thing. While competition in the water is peaking, the land is virtually empty, just bare rock and wind. Leaving that safe, buoyant, wet environment for the land was incredibly dangerous. You're trading all that safety for harsh sun, heavy gravity, and the constant, deadly risk of just drying out. To those early aquatic creatures, the land was quite literally an alien world.
So how did life finally conquer the land? Well, step one. Plants bravely take root, anchoring the soil and pumping oxygen into the air to make it habitable. Step two. The early arthropods, the ancestors of insects, arrive. Step 3. You get these brave fish living in shallow waters whose fins slowly strengthen over time to push against the mud, eventually becoming legs. And finally, step 4. The true conquerors arrive when reptiles figure out how to lay hard eggs, protecting their young from drying out away from the water. Absolutely brilliant evolutionary workaround.
66 million.
That is a massive number. Because as those reptiles spread and massive forests grew, the mighty dinosaurs eventually came to rule. For millions of years, they were the kings. But Earth's history isn't a straight line. It's full of catastrophes. Roughly 66 million years ago, everything changed in a flash. A massive asteroid impact plunged the world into fire, dust, and darkness, completely breaking the food chain.
It's kind of a brutal irony of evolution. You have these giant, dominant rulers of Earth, the dinosaurs, completely wiped out. And who actually survives? Small, nocturnal, warm-blooded early mammals. Because they were small, they just needed way less food. Because they were warm-blooded and nocturnal, they could hide out in the shadows and survive the freezing dark aftermath. The extinction of the dinosaurs completely cleared the main stage for our mammalian ancestors.
With the giant predators gone, mammals really flourished. Some of them headed up into the trees, and they developed what we call the primate advantage. To survive up high, they needed grasping hands to hold onto branches, and forward-facing eyes to get the depth perception needed for jumping. Couple those traits with a really deep focus on nurturing their young, and you have the fundamental biological groundwork for our earliest primate relatives. Believe it or not, those very same grasping hands would one day build the modern world.
As the climate changed yet again, lush forests started shrinking into open plains, forcing our ancestors to adapt and step out into the open. The path to humanity from there is just an incredible progression. You have Australopithecus walking upright on two legs, freeing up their hands. Then Homo habilis uses those free hands to start making stone tools. Homo erectus takes it even further by controlling fire. And eventually Homo sapiens arrive, bringing complex thought, art, and true imagination into the mix.
Out of all of that, the real accelerator for our development was the power of fire. Obviously, it gives light and warmth, but crucially, it lets us cook meat and roots. And here's a fascinating biological secret. Cooked food is just vastly easier to digest. It gives us the massive excess energy required to actually grow larger, more complex brains. Plus, sitting around a fire created a safe space for language to develop, for knowledge to be shared, and for a real community to form.
Now think about this for a second. We were not alone. Different human species once lived together on Earth. That is a deeply humbling thought, isn't it? As our ancestors were evolving, we weren't the only humans around. Species like the Neanderthals and the Denisovans shared this exact planet with us. They were strong, they survived freezing climates, made tools, and even hunted right alongside our ancestors.
So out of all those human species, why did Homo sapiens endure? Well, we had the Homo sapiens edge, and it wasn't about having the sharpest claws. It was mental and social. We had an unmatched imagination to envision the future. We had complex language for storytelling. We started creating symbolic art on cave walls, searching for meaning. But our absolute superpower was our ability for deep collaboration, teaching each other and working together in huge numbers, which let us spread to every single corner of the globe.
That sets us up for the final massive leap, which happened relatively recently in this billions of years story, the dawn of civilization. It happens in steps. First, we figure out how to start farming crops. That means we don't have to be nomadic hunters anymore, so we start building permanent villages. Those villages grow and merge, forming complex societies. And those societies, they eventually transform into the sprawling, highly advanced cities we all live in today.
So, let's tie all of this together. If there's one thing you take away from this explainer, it's that humans didn't just pop out of nowhere. The history of Earth lives inside us. Literally. Our spines, remember those ancient sea creatures that first grew a backbone? Our hands echo those tree-dwelling primates gripping branches. And every single breath you take relies on those microscopic organisms that first figured out how to pump out oxygen billions of years ago. We are a product of this planet. Which leads perfectly to this quote. Evolution is not a ladder. It is a tree. We have this habit of thinking humanity sits at the very top of some ladder as the final perfect goal of nature. But that's not true. Evolution is a massive, ongoing tree of life, and we are just one really fascinating branch on it. The process hasn't stopped for a second. Bacteria are adapting, animals are changing, and we are continually evolving right alongside our environment. Earth made us, but now the future of Earth is in our hands. We have this one incredibly unique trait. We're the only creatures that can actually look back and understand this entire 4.6 billion year origin story. But, with that knowledge comes some really heavy responsibility. Earth patiently shaped us over billions of years, but because of our technology,
The future of this beautiful, fragile planet now falls entirely on our shoulders.
So, I want to leave you with one final question to chew on. Could life like Earth's begin elsewhere in the universe? The next time you look in the mirror, don't just see a face. Try to see billions of years of an epic journey that survived fire, ice, and asteroids. And the next time you drink a simple glass of water, remember the ancient oceans where it all kicked off. It really makes you wonder, if this incredibly impossible story of life happened right here, what other mind-blowing stories are just waiting to be discovered?